Uh-oh.
Okay, we'll start with this. Bob Arum is reluctant to place Teofimo Lopez versus Subriel Matias on pay-per-view, as piracy has crippled buys and altered the complexion of an option that boxing promoters have previously been eager to explore. One coming high-profile bout may provide some insight into the threshold. Top-ranked chairman Bob Arum told Boxing Scene on Monday that he's increasingly reluctant to place a potential Lopez versus Matias fight on pay-per-view.
I'm not so enamored with pay-per-view. So few people buy them now.
While Brooklyn's charismatic two-division champion Lopez is a bona fide commodity, Puerto Rico's Matias lost his IBF title after one successful defense to since unbeaten Liam Paro of Australia. The fight being targeted for March 15th, according to an original report by ESPN, would likely be placed on ESPN rather than pay-per-view if Top Rank chooses.
We're losing so many buys with piracy, and until you get a grip on that, the numbers you're counting on are not the numbers they should be.
The former Department of Justice prosecutor under Robert F. Kennedy said,
"There's not enough policing. There should be real penalties to those who are ripping off the signal."
While piracy has its role to play in dwindling pay-per-view sales, I would not overstate its role, because abuse of the pay-per-view model also has its role to play, and the disconnect between what the fighters think they're worth and what they think a fight should cost versus how the consumers feel, that's a factor as well. You don't know with any certainty that all these people watching these fights via illegal streams would have ever paid for them. As such, you can't really lose what you never really had, though pay-per-view sales in and of itself, they are dwindling.
And if it's not piracy, then what is it?
Oversaturation of the market, overuse, abuse of the pay-per-view model. The last 5-6 years, too many fights ending up there where they should be part of a regular schedule. So if last year's Ryan Garcia versus Gervonta Davis fight taught us anything, it's that the right fight, even in this climate, can do 1 million pay-per-view buys, but it's gotta be one that has a grassroots interest. I'm not a fan of Ryan Garcia, much less Gervonta Davis, but they do have fans, and those fans paid to see that fight, meaning that it's still possible to sell 1 million pay-per-view buys.
Not with Gervonta Davis versus Rolly Romero or Frank Martin or Mario Barrios. Not with guys like that, but with a Ryan Garcia, you can do it because they did it.
Terrence Crawford and Errol Spence Jr. sold just under 1 million pay-per-view buys with their fight.
What does that tell us?
That if the guarantees to the fighters and the operational costs for a show are kept reasonable, you can turn over a profit. 800,000 pay-per-view buys is still a robust number. The right fight, if you play your cards right, can bring in robust numbers. The disconnect is thinking that you can duplicate that success with every other fight.
You're hearing that Bob Arum is reluctant to put Teofimo Lopez versus Subriel Matias on pay-per-view. That's a good fight, but I saw how people reacted.
To say that you should have to pay $50 or $60 or $80 to see Teofimo Lopez versus Subriel Matias, that's a stretch.
Like with Benavidez versus Morel?
But just because it's a good fight or a solid fight doesn't mean you should have to pay extra. So when you tell people that's what they gotta do, this is what you get.
Abysmal numbers.
Previous eras of boxing, you didn't have to pay extra on top of what you're already paying to see a good fight, a solid fight. Now, somebody's doing a pay-per-view every other month, and that's what's gotta stop.
Why are they doing it?
To satisfy the fighters' financial demands. The fighters are only gonna fight certain guys for a certain price.
Got too many fighters in this era trying to set their own asking price based on what they think they're worth or a fight, and it's not up to them. It's up to me and you.
They don't determine the market value of a show. We do, because we create the demand. And as such, unless you were demanding that Teofimo fight Subriel Matias, unless enough of us were doing that, you can't turn around and try to charge us extra. Then it's just the gamble. Then it's just the crapshoot.
It's not good.
Fighters want so much money. The network's not just gonna throw money at them, so the only way to get them that extra is to put them on pay-per-view. And of course, they're gonna jump at the chance, fingers crossed, hoping for the best. Hoping they do robust numbers, but time and time again, what have we seen? And every time you give them that chance, you're costing your broadcast partner eyeballs. You're limiting the size of the audience by putting the fight behind a paywall, where if it were a regular fight, more people would have seen it.
That strengthens the relationship between the promoter and the broadcast partner, because what the broadcaster wants is as many eyes on their content as possible. The content they're paying you for.
The promoter.
So in the greater scheme of things, what's more important? Satisfying a fighter's financial demands or satisfying your broadcast partner's needs?
It's not a hard decision to make when replacing a broadcast partner is a lot more difficult than replacing a fighter or some fighters.
There's fighters all over the place.
But networks willing to give you an annual budget to do shows throughout a calendar year? Not so much. You have to control the spending, because being irresponsible with the budget is costly. I remember when Deontay Wilder rejected DAZN's $100 million to fight Anthony Joshua, the people at Showtime prepared a care package for him to the tune of $14 to $15 million. $15 million for a Dominic Breazeale fight?
Ridiculous.
That fight shouldn't cost you more than $2.5 to $3 million. At the most. But that's what Showtime spent for Wilder's loyalty. So that, in Wilder's very next fight, a proposed Luis Ortiz rematch, a pay-per-view
that nobody was asking for.
That same Showtime could end up passing on it because they knew it's not going to sell anything, and we just gave this guy $15 million?
They passed on it. The pay-per-view ends up on Fox instead of Showtime.
Well, what about the money? What about them paying Wilder that $14 or $15 million care package?
It's in the wind. You overpaid that guy for rejecting DAZN's offer when you should have just let him take it.
There is a lesson in there that's lost on most boxing fans. The boxer isn't always right. If you ask the boxer and his manager, it's always supposed to work out to where they get more money.
Always.
What isn't always fiscally responsible. You have to be responsible with the money entrusted to you by your broadcast partner. You can't just fritter it away satisfying a fighter's financial demands. How that relates to this situation with Teofimo is Teofimo versus Subriel is a good fight, but I don't know that it's pay-per-view worthy.
You're sacrificing a lot of eyes to get him a bit more money, and that's if he can even get it.
That's if that pay-per-view even has an upside. Hell, that's if that pay-per-view even breaks even, because it might not. Might come in the red.
It happens.
And so the question now is, can they do Lopez versus Matias as a regular fight? Can they find a way, find the money, to where you don't have to put it behind a paywall?
That's for the platform, the promoter, and the powers that be to decide.
They're the ones that gotta figure it out. Now over to a fight that I do think is pay-per-view worthy. Bill Haney is desperate for Haney versus Garcia rematch, quote-unquote. We do it for the people.
You do it to line your pockets.
Bill Haney is pushing desperately to secure a Devin Haney versus Ryan Garcia rematch. Their first clash took place in April of last year. The fight was marred by lots of controversy. Garcia missed the 140-pound weight by over 3 pounds. Haney agreed to go ahead with the fight after Garcia paid him $1.5 million. Garcia's behavior also raised concerns over his mental well-being, but Ryan produced on the biggest stage, dropping Haney 3 times to secure a shock majority decision win. The The result, however, became a no contest. Ryan tested positive for aspirin. He was given a year ban, meaning he cannot box until April of this year. Devin Haney responded by suing Ryan Garcia for breach of contract, fraud, and unjust enrichment. Ryan reacted by countersuing Haney, creating more bad blood. Although the two fighters have said they were open to running it back, Oscar De La Hoya has other plans for Ryan. He is talking up a fight with Teofimo Lopez and Jaron Ennis, but Bill knows Devin has a score to settle. Devin's brand has suffered massively. He has struggled to get a fight since then. Meanwhile, he is unlikely to get a huge purse like he did for facing Ryan. The rematch was Bill's priority.
So we just talked about why Lopez versus Matias isn't pay-per-view worthy. Lopez versus Garcia, however, you could bill that as a pay-per-view to where if things don't work out between Teofimo and Subriel,
Go after Ryan. See about fighting Ryan.
they also mentioned Jaron Ennis, IBF champion at 147 pounds. For all the talk around him, I don't see that as a real option for Ryan. I don't think Ryan is serious. I don't think Oscar is serious.
Not about that one.
And Devin?
Devin is a champion. Ryan Garcia is not. Oscar De La Hoya hasn't been able to make a champion out of Ryan Garcia. Devin wants to fight whoever the people want to see, but he wants it to be on a level playing field. We do it for the people. They're the ones that pay the bills, not the promoters. If the fans want to see a fight, then there's a network that wants to put it on.
Said Bill Haney.
He's not wrong. Oscar De La Hoya has not been able to get Ryan Garcia to an alphabet title, a full title, mostly because Ryan doesn't want one. And all the responsibilities that come with it. To be a champion, you have to make the weight. We know he doesn't care about that. You have to satisfy your mandatories. You think you're gonna strong arm him? So Bill Haney is right. Oscar hasn't been able to turn Ryan into a bona fide champion, but that's because Ryan doesn't want to be a bona fide champion. So that don't give you leverage over them.
Sorry.
The days of Oscar De La Hoya saying what he wants are over with. He said there's no need for a rematch, but that's him not listening to the people. That's him creating fake narratives as if the people aren't calling for it. Bill said. The problem in making the rematch is the terms. Haney will want a bigger purse given everything that's happened in the first fight. He may also demand extra concessions to ensure that Garcia makes the weight. The weight class also needs to be decided. Garcia said he cannot make 140 pounds any longer. The higher weight classes will favor Ryan, whose power carries through the higher weights.
I said the fight is pay-per-view worthy, but I never said it was going to be easy to make.
Will it happen? Devin is not a big puncher, meaning he faces more risks by moving up. Garcia will also see himself as the A-side. Despite failing the VADA tests, his social media following has increased massively. That gives him more leverage in talks. If the two egos get in the way, the rematch won't happen. Bill wanted strict drug testing before any rematch takes place.
Not an outlandish request, given the circumstances, but they still don't have the leverage to get what they want.
And that's the problem with this one. This one actually is pay-per-view worthy. I don't know the exact number this could do. Maybe 500,000, maybe more. The controversy made it bigger.
It's definitely pay-per-view worthy, but harder to negotiate.
The biggest thing is drug testing. He said he was crazy, so if you were crazy enough to do it the first time, then you'll be crazy enough to do it a second time. That's the stickler, that he enrolls in a drug testing program. Bill added. I don't know that anybody's been testing Ryan Garcia throughout the duration of this suspension. I get the sense that they're not.
He could be doping right now.
Anti-doping testing isn't free. Somebody has to pay for it. And I've heard no news of Ryan Garcia being tested throughout the duration of this suspension. I've seen some other situations like this one where randomized testing was a part of the suspension.
Don't appear to be the case here.
Bill's request is not an outlandish one. The problem is he has no leverage in the situation. There's nothing you got that can force Ryan to play ball.
Nada.
And still, the American boxing scene needs this one. I think this could do a good gate, robust numbers at the box office. I think they could do all right if they get it over the line, because the Americans don't care that much about Fury and Usyk or Artur and Dimitri.
They don't care about undisputed champions?
No. The dysfunction, The toxicity of Ryan Garcia is more appealing, more intriguing to them than a couple of consummate professionals having a boxing match, because what appeals to the American boxing fan is dysfunction.
So a lot of great fights in 2024. Wortley versus Clark, 1 and 2. Fury versus Usyk, Better Be versus Beeful.
The Matchroom versus Queensbury tournament. There were a lot of good fights, a lot of good cards, and yet the Americans...
Inouye versus Neary was a great fight.
They're not moved by any of that stuff, though. Not the way they would be if Devin and Ryan fought again. That's more to their liking. Now, maybe it's because it involves two homegrown American fighters, or maybe it's because one of them is a train wreck,
Like your mother.
and one of them is a pillow-fisted bitch.
Like your father.
The intricacies of why this fight is much more appealing to them than what we've seen in the previous calendar year, your guess is as good as mine. The long and the short of it is, this can do numbers. This can captivate their attention if they get it done. They're not getting Canelo versus Benavidez. They're not getting Javante versus anybody with a pulse.
You gotta fill the void with something.
It's not like they have an elite level heavyweight to gravitate towards, to latch onto. They don't have that either. Terrence Crawford, arguably America's best, if not America's best, he only fought once this entire calendar year.
Will he fight more in the next one?
At 36 or 37 years old, he might call it a career in the next one. Essentially, what I'm getting at is there's a void. There's a void to be filled, and they can fill it with this fight between Devin and Ryan.
America needs it. The American boxing scene needs this one.
I think for the sake of their bank accounts, they need to put their differences aside, not leave all that money on the table and get it done. Work it out to where Ryan has a tune-up and Devin has a tune-up. Then these two guys meet over the summer months. Don't squander the opportunity. Having a bitter rival in the sport of boxing oftentimes is a blessing in disguise. A frick to your frack.
How you can turn a negative into a positive. All that stuff that happened in the first fight makes the second one even bigger.
Looks like the both of these boys want to fight above 140 pounds moving forward. Because for all of Bill's talk of Devin being a champion, he's not a champion right now. He ain't got no belt. Nothing to keep him at 140.
Fight Ryan at 147.
Now he's giving you a hard time about the anti-doping testing. It's almost like he doesn't want to get tested. Use that to your advantage.
How?
Use as many steroids as you can. You hit like a girl.
Like a bitch.
Come back in a rematch, juice to the gills till you hit like a man. You say you don't want no anti-doping testing. Hey, I don't either. So how about it, cowboy? Your juice versus my juice. Your gear versus my gear. Yeah! Do it! Fill yourself full enough Trimbo, your back looks like a sliced Domino's pizza. Do it!
Trimbo.
Sprinkle a little bit of Osterin in there. For old time's sake, in commemoration of the first one, you bring that to the party in the second. Do it! There's no problem that ain't got a solution. That could be yours. He don't want to get tested.
Then you shouldn't either.
Can fight your way out of a wet paper bag. You can't punch.
Fix it.
They don't want to fight you on an even playing field, so let's keep it uneven as possible.
Stop being a bitch.